I stood in the rain, wallet soaked through, watching the old key dangle from my left hand as they slammed the door in my face without a shred of remorse. They had chosen money over their daughter. So what did I do? I didn't scream, didn't beg. Instead, I started playing the game they thought only old folks knew how to play, calculating, gathering evidence, and exacting a price they would never forget. Listen closely, because sometimes revenge is a lesson that can't be taken back. My name is Claire Bennett, and at 39, I thought I understood the unspoken contracts of family. I managed projects for the Lumen Housing Initiative, a nonprofit that helped families find stable homes. Ironic, considering what happened with my own. The rain that October evening wasn't just water falling from the sky. It was the universe's way of washing away illusions I'd held for too long. The Fletcher estate, my parents' Helen and Robert's pride, sat on 3 acres in Willowbrook, a suburb where mailboxes had names instead of numbers and where everyone pretended their families were perfect. I'd driven there after work, my usual Thursday routine of checking on them since Dad's mild stroke last year. The key they'd given me years ago felt heavy in my hand as I approached the front door, but this time, the lock had been changed. I stood there, confused, pressing the doorbell. Through the frosted glass panels, I saw Mom's silhouette approaching. The door opened 6 inches, held by the chain. "Claire," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We need to talk." "So open the door. Mom, it's pouring." Robert and I have been discussing things with Brandon, my younger brother, the golden child who'd managed to fail upward into a mid-level finance job. "We think it's time you learned to be more independent." The word hung between us like a curse. Independent. After I'd paid for Brandon's MBA when he'd gambled away his savings. After I'd covered their property taxes 3 years running when Dad's investments tanked. After the kitchen renovation, the medical bills, the loan that mysteriously disappeared into what they called necessary expenses. "You're locking me out." My voice stayed steady, but my hands shook. In the rain, Dad appeared behind her, his recovery apparently complete enough for this ambush. "You're 39. Claire. It's embarrassing. How you hover." Brandon says. I laughed, bitter as black coffee. When did Brandon become the family spokesperson? When I paid his rent for 6 months, or when I covered his DUI lawyer? "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, already closing the door. "You can afford a hotel." The door shut. The deadbolt turned with a definitive click. I stood there, rain streaming down my face, mixing with something that might have been tears if I'd been the crying type. My car keys were in my pocket, my purse still on my shoulder. But something had shifted fundamentally. The porch light went off, leaving me in darkness except for the landscape lighting that illuminated their perfect garden, maintained by landscapers I'd paid for last spring when Mom complained about Dad's back. I walked to my car slowly, each step measured. My phone buzzed a text from Brandon. "It's for your own good. Sis, you need boundaries." Boundaries. From people who'd had their hands out for 15 years. I sat in my car, engine running, heater fighting the October chill. My wet clothes stuck to the leather seats of the practical sedan I'd bought because Mom said my previous car was too showy for someone in nonprofit work. Every sacrifice, every check written, every time I'd said, "Of course, your family," it all crystallized into a single, sharp realization. They'd taken my generosity as weakness, my love as obligation, my support as something they were entitled to, like interest on an investment they'd never actually made. The Northbridge Trust that family fund my late grandfather had established had always been the elephant in the room. Mom and Dad controlled it as trustees, dangling eventual inheritance like a carrot while extracting what they wanted in the present. But I knew something they didn't know. I knew I'd seen the documents once, accidentally, when helping Dad organize his office. The trust had provisions, conditions, contingencies, and trustees could be removed for cause. I drove away from my parents' house, windshield wipers beating a rhythm that matched my pulse. They wanted me to be independent. Fine, but independence worked both ways. They'd just given me a choice: accept this humiliation in silence, or make them pay the price for their betrayal. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made my decision. They thought they were dealing with the same dutiful daughter who'd always put family first. They were wrong. That woman had drowned in the rain outside their locked door. What emerged was someone else entirely, someone who understood that sometimes. The best lesson you can teach someone is that actions have consequences, and some choices can't be undone. The numbers haunted me that night. $800,000, that's what I'd given them over the years. Not all at once, of course. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one justified by love, duty, or guilt. It started small. Brandon's freshman year textbooks when he'd forgotten to budget for them. $300. Then his fraternity dues because networking is important for his future. $2,000. The spiral began innocently enough, each request prefaced with, "Just this once," or "We'll pay you back when things improve." Things never improved. They just got more expensive. I pulled out my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I'd never had the courage to total before. Each line item felt like reading a crime report. March 2019, Mom's emergency dental work, unnecessary veneers. I later learned $12,000. June 2019, Dad's investment opportunity with his golf buddy, $50,000, gone within 3 months. December 2019, Brandon's career coaching program, a glorified MLM scheme, $8,000. January 2020, property taxes they forgot to budget for $18,000. The pandemic years were the worst. While I worked overtime coordinating emergency housing for displaced families, my own family treated me like an ATM with unlimited funds. "We're struggling," Mom would say from their 5-bedroom house. "Brandon's having a hard time," she'd add, while he posted Instagram photos from Cabo. September 2021 was when I'd crossed the line from helpful to enabling. Brandon had gotten a DUI, his second, and faced serious jail time. The lawyer cost $40,000. The rehabilitation program, another $20,000. The victim's settlement, undisclosed but substantial enough that I'd had to liquidate my retirement account. "Family takes care of family," Dad had said then, patting my shoulder like I was a good dog who'd fetched the right stick. My phone rang. Lena, my former colleague who'd moved to Portland but still checked in regularly. "How'd the Thursday visit go?" she asked. "They changed the locks." Silence. Then, "Claire, please tell me you're joking." I told her everything. The rain, the chain on the door, Brandon's text about boundaries. "After everything you've done," her voice rose. "Did you remind them about the money? They know, Lena. They just don't care. Or worse, they think they deserved it. You need to cut them off." I'd heard this from her before, always deflecting with excuses. They're getting older. Brandon's still finding himself. Family is complicated. But tonight, the excuses had drowned in the rain along with my patience. "I'm not just cutting them off," I said. "I'm going to do something more." The pattern was clear now, looking at my spreadsheet. Every major expense coincided with deposits from the Northbridge Trust into their personal accounts. They were double-dipping, taking distributions from the trust while pleading poverty to me. The house renovation I'd paid for. The trust had allocated funds for the same purpose. Brandon's education covered by the trust's education provision, yet they'd still asked me to pay. But the most damning thing I'd discovered was recent. Last month, while helping Mom with her computer, I'd glimpsed an email from someone named Evan Cross. Esque. The subject line, "Re-guardianship proceedings preliminary discussion." They weren't just taking my money. They were planning to take my autonomy. The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. The sudden concern about my mental health after I'd questioned a large withdrawal request, Brandon's comments about my obsessive work habits, Mom's suggestions that I seemed stressed and not quite yourself lately. They were building a case, create the problem, then offer to solve it by taking control of my finances for my own good. I laughed, harsh and bitter in my empty apartment. They'd taught me well. Hadn't they? How to document everything, how to plan 3 steps ahead, how to turn someone's weapon against them. The difference was, I'd learned another lesson they hadn't meant to teach, that blood relations don't make someone family, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones calculating your worth in dollar signs. Tomorrow, I'd make some calls, set some meetings, begin the process of teaching my own lessons about consequences. They wanted independence. They were about to learn what that really meant, starting with the sudden absence of their most reliable revenue stream. But that was just the beginning. If they thought they could plot against me while picking my pockets, they were about to discover I'd inherited more than just grandfather's eyes. I'd inherited his ruthlessness too. Friday morning came sharp and clear, the kind of October day that made last night's rain feel like a fever dream. But the spreadsheet on my laptop screen was real. The email about guardianship proceedings was real. The anger crystallizing in my chest was definitely real. I called in sick to work first time in 3 years and made my battle plan. First call, Daniel Mercer, Esquire. I'd found him through a client at Lumen Housing who'd fought off her own family's attempt to control her inheritance. His office was in the financial district, 15th floor, with a view of the harbor. More importantly, he had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when it came to financial elder abuse and family manipulation cases. Ms. Bennett. His voice was professionally warm over the phone. I've reviewed your initial email. Can you come in this afternoon? 2:30. I'll be there. Second call. Patricia Moran, private investigator. Another recommendation from the network of people who'd survived family betrayal. She specialized in financial investigations, particularly what she called family fraud dynamics. They're planning a guardianship proceeding. Patricia's tone sharpened. That's aggressive. Usually families work up to that for years. They have been, I realized. I just wasn't paying attention. Most victims don't. Love makes us blind. Bring everything you have: bank statements, emails, texts, everything. Third call was the hardest. Marcus Rivera, forensic accountant. He'd cost me $5,000 just for the initial consultation and review, but Lena had insisted he was worth it. He can find money trails that don't officially exist, she'd said. By noon, I'd assembled my war council. By 2:30, I was in Daniel Mercer's office, laying out 15 years of financial abuse. 800,000, Daniel repeated, adjusting his glasses. Documented. Every penny, bank transfers, canceled checks, even Venmo transactions. I pushed the folder across his mahogany desk. But that's not the real problem. I showed him the email about guardianship proceedings, then the trust documents I'd photographed years ago. His expression shifted from professional interest to predatory focus. They're trustees of Northbridge Trust, collecting management fees and distributions, while simultaneously claiming financial hardship to extract money from you. He made notes on a legal pad. And now they want to declare you incompetent to manage your own affairs. That's my understanding. Ms. Bennett, this isn't just financial abuse. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and potentially criminal theft by deception. He leaned back. What's your goal here? I'd thought about this all morning. 3 things. First, stop any guardianship proceeding dead. Second, expose their financial manipulation and recover what I can. Third, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. Daniel smiled, sharp as winter. I can work with that. First step, we file for an immediate competency evaluation with a neuropsychologist of our choosing. Get ahead of their narrative. Second, we petition the court for an accounting of the Northbridge Trust, citing potential trustee malfeasance. Third, we document everything for potential criminal referral. Criminal. Trust fraud, especially involving elderly beneficiaries, even if your parents aren't elderly yet, is taken seriously. The fact that they're plotting guardianship while extracting funds, that's conspiracy. Patricia Moran's office was smaller, cluttered with surveillance equipment and filing cabinets. She was exactly what I'd expected mid-50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a blazer that concealed a shoulder holster. Financial predators and families follow patterns, she explained, pulling up a flowchart on her computer. Create dependency. Isolate the victim. Gradually increase demands. Then, when the well runs dry, find a way to access other assets. Your parents hit every marker. She outlined her investigation plan, pulling property records, investigating the lawyer Evan Cross, tracking down Brandon's actual financial status, and identifying any other hidden accounts or assets. I'll also look into their communications. Legal methods only, she added, seeing my expression. But people get careless with email and social media, especially adult children who think they're entitled to an inheritance. Marcus Rivera worked from home. His office a converted bedroom lined with monitors displaying spreadsheets and financial databases. The Northbridge Trust is interesting, he said after reviewing my documents. Annual distributions of $200,000 to your parents as trustees, plus management fees of 3% of assets. The trust is worth approximately $4 million. $4 million. I sat back, stunned. They told me it was mostly gone. Bad investments after 2008. Oh, it took a hit, but recovered nicely. They've been collecting about $300,000 annually from the trust while claiming poverty to you. His fingers flew over the keyboard. And look here, large withdrawals coinciding with your major payments to them. They were double dipping. The rage I'd been controlling threatened to spill over. Can you prove it? Give me a week. I'll have every transaction mapped, every coincidence documented. If they bought a coffee with trust funds, I'll find it. By 5 that evening, I'd spent nearly $10,000 on retainers and consultations. It was worth every penny. I had a team now, professionals who understood that family could be the cruelest enemy of all. My phone buzzed. Mom. Claire, don't be childish. Brandon says you haven't responded to his text about Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner, like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't locked me out in the rain 12 hours ago. I won't be coming to Sunday dinner, I said calmly. Or any dinner. Don't be dramatic. Mom, I'm done being dramatic. I'm also done being your bank. Good luck with your property taxes this December. I hung up on her protests, then blocked the number. Brandon's too. Dad's would follow once I'd saved the voicemails I knew were coming evidence for Patricia. They'd wanted me independent. They were about to learn that independence meant I no longer had to tolerate their abuse. But more than that, they were about to discover that the daughter they'd raised to be responsible, thorough, and detail-oriented had learned those lessons too well. The war had begun. They just didn't know it yet. Patricia Moran worked fast. Within a week, she'd uncovered a labyrinth of deception that made my stomach turn. Your brother Brandon isn't just failing upward, she said, spreading photos and documents across her cluttered desk. He's been actively coordinating with your parents and Evan Cross for the past 6 months. The evidence was damning. Email printouts between Brandon and Cross discussing the Claire situation. Bank records showing mysterious consulting fees paid to a shell company Brandon had registered. Most disturbing, a PowerPoint presentation titled Competency Concerns C. Bennett, dated 3 months ago. They've been planning this since July, Patricia continued. Right after you questioned that $50,000 withdrawal for your father's medical expenses. Marcus Rivera's findings were equally devastating. He'd traced the money flows with surgical precision, creating a visual map that looked like a spider web of greed. Look at this pattern, he said, pointing to his monitor. Every time you made a large payment to them, within 72 hours, there's a corresponding luxury purchase. You paid $40,000 for Brandon's lawyer. Your parents bought a new Mercedes 3 days later. The $20,000 for Brandon's rehab. They booked a Mediterranean cruise within a week. They weren't even hiding it. They didn't think they needed to. Who audits their own parents? Marcus pulled up another screen. But here's the smoking gun internal trust documents showing they've been categorizing your payments as gifts from beneficiary to avoid tax implications, while simultaneously claiming them as loans in their personal accounting to justify taking more from the trust. That's fraud. Multiple types of fraud. Actually, Daniel Mercer had been busy too. He'd filed our preemptive competency evaluation petition, catching the other side off guard. Evan Cross called me yesterday, Daniel said during our strategy meeting. Very angry that we'd ambushed them. Apparently, they planned to file their guardianship petition next Monday. What did you tell him? That my client was taking proactive steps to document her excellent mental health and financial acumen. Also mentioned we'd be seeking a full accounting of the Northbridge Trust. Daniel smiled. He hung up on me. The neuropsychological evaluation was scheduled for Thursday. Dr. Sarah Winters came highly recommended. She'd testified in over 200 competency cases. Be yourself, Daniel advised. Answer honestly. The fact that they're trying to paint you as incompetent while you're successfully managing projects for a major nonprofit is already absurd. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Patricia had been investigating Evan Cross when she discovered something odd. Cross isn't just any lawyer, she explained. He specializes in trust manipulation, helping families extract maximum value from trusts while sidelining beneficiaries. He's been sanctioned twice by the bar for ethics violations. And my parents hired him? Your brother hired him, actually. But here's where it gets interesting. She pulled out a highlighted document. Cross has a partner named Richard Stein. Stein's wife is Vanessa Stein, formerly Vanessa Fletcher. Fletcher like my mother. Your mother's cousin. This is a family conspiracy. Claire. They're all in on it. The scope of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just my parents and Brandon. The extended family was involved, circling like vultures around grandfather's trust. That evening, I sat in my apartment with all the evidence spread across my dining table: bank records, emails, trust documents, photographs, a paper trail of systematic financial abuse and attempted legal manipulation. My phone, now unblocked for evidence collection, had 43 missed calls. The voicemails ranged from cajoling to threatening. Mom, Claire, sweetie, let's talk about this like adults. Dad, you're being irrational. This is exactly why we're concerned. Brandon, you fucking bitch. You think you're so smart. We know about your mental health issues. Mental health issues. I almost laughed. Seeking therapy after a difficult breakup 5 years ago was now being weaponized as evidence of instability. Patricia had also discovered their evidence file. Photos taken at family dinners where I looked tired after working 60-hour weeks. Emails taken out of context where I'd expressed normal work stress. Even a video Brandon had secretly recorded of me crying at our grandmother's funeral last year. They've been building this case for months, Patricia said. Every family interaction was potential evidence. They were never your family, Claire. They were your predators. Marcus found more financial irregularities. A second mortgage on the family home that I hadn't known about. Credit cards in my name that I'd never opened. Identity theft. Plain and simple. Investment accounts that should have been in my name. Held in trust but never disclosed. Total theft and fraud. Marcus calculated. Approximately $1.3 million over 15 years. Daniel prepared our counteroffensive. We're filing multiple actions simultaneously. Petition to remove your parents as trustees for breach of fiduciary duty. Criminal complaint for identity theft and fraud. Civil suit for recovery of stolen funds. And a restraining order to prevent them from coming near you during proceedings. Will it work? Claire, with what Patricia and Marcus have found, they'll be lucky to avoid prison. The evaluation with Dr. Winters went perfectly. 6 hours of cognitive tests, psychological assessments, and clinical interviews. Ms. Bennett, she said at the end, not only are you fully competent, you're in the 98th percentile for executive function and decision-making. The idea that you need a guardian is laughable. Her report would be devastating to their case. But I wasn't done. Patricia had one more card to play. There's a trust board meeting next month, she said. Annual review of trustee performance. It's usually a rubber stamp, but beneficiaries have the right to present concerns. I'm a beneficiary. You're the primary beneficiary. Claire, your parents are just trustees. The trust was always meant for you, they've just been stealing from it. The pieces were all in place. Evidence collected, legal strategy mapped, expert opinions secured. My family had thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They were about to learn they weren't even on the board anymore. The trap was delicate work, like setting a spider web made of legal documents and recorded conversations. Daniel had suggested the reconciliation dinner strategy. "Let them think you're weakening," he said. "Guilty children often come crawling back. Give them the rope." I unblocked Mom's number and waited. It took exactly 4 hours. "Claire, honey, I'm so glad you're ready to be reasonable," she gushed when I answered. "Why don't you come for dinner Saturday?" "Just family. We can work this all out." "I'll come," I said, injecting just enough weariness into my voice. 7. Perfect. And Claire, leave your phone in the car. We want this to be about healing, not recording conversations. How ironic. They were worried about me recording them. Saturday arrived gray and bitter. I wore the outfit Mom always said made me look tired and unsuccessful, a calculated choice. Patricia had equipped me with 3 separate recording devices, a pen, a brooch that looked like vintage costume jewelry, and a button camera on my blazer, all legal in our state with single-party consent. "Remember," Daniel had coached, "you're not trying to get a confession. You're letting them incriminate themselves. Talk about your concerns for the family finances. Express worry about the trust. Let them reassure you." The house smelled like pot roast Mom's manipulation special, the meal she made when she wanted something expensive. Brandon's BMW was in the driveway, alongside a Lincoln I didn't recognize. Evan Cross. They'd brought their lawyer to a family dinner. "Claire." Mom opened the door wide, performative concern painted across her face. "You look exhausted, sweetheart." "Work's been challenging," I said truthfully. They didn't need to know the challenge was documenting their crimes while maintaining my normal schedule. The dining room was staged like an intervention. Dad at the head, Mom to his right, Brandon to his left, and Cross beside Brandon. The empty chair mine faced them all like a defendant's seat. "Wine." Brandon offered, already pouring. His hands shook slightly. "Good." He was nervous. "Just water," I said. "I'm driving." "Always so responsible," Dad said. But it wasn't a compliment. "That's what we want to discuss. Claire, this obsession with control." I let them talk, and talk, and talk. Mom started with concern, trolling, "We've noticed you've been isolating yourself, working these insane hours. It's not healthy." Brandon jumped in with false memories. "Remember when you had that breakdown in 2019? You called me at 3 in the morning, crying about nothing." "That was when Grandma died," I said quietly. "See, you're rewriting history. Grandma died in 2020. "No, Brandon. She died March 15th, 2019. I have the death certificate." Evan Cross cleared his throat. "Ms. Bennett, your family is simply concerned about your well-being, the hours you work, the stress you're under, the fact that you give away substantial sums to—" He checked his notes. "Various family members without any formal agreements or documentation." There it was. They were framing my financial support as evidence of incompetence. "You're right," I said, letting my shoulders slump. "I haven't been careful with documentation. The $800,000 I've given over the years, I should have kept better records." The room went silent. $800,000, Cross repeated, glancing at my parents. "That seems inflated." "Oh no, I have all the records now. Every check, every transfer. Marcus, my accountant, helped me organize everything for taxes." I pulled out my phone, ignoring Mom's glare. "Would you like to see the spreadsheet?" "That won't be necessary," Cross said quickly. Too quickly. "But shouldn't we discuss it?" I asked, playing confused. "I mean, if you're concerned about my financial judgment, shouldn't we review where the money went? Like the $50,000 for Dad's investment with Tom Garrett, did that ever pay out?" Dad's face flushed. "That's not relevant. Or the $40,000 for Brandon's lawyer, Kimberly Hastings. Wasn't it? She seemed expensive for a simple DUI. "It wasn't simple," Brandon snapped. "There were complications. Because it was your second one." I tilted my head. "Or because of the property damage," Cross held up a hand. "Ms. Bennett, these past gifts aren't really the issue. We're concerned about your future decision-making. Oh, I understand. You're worried I might keep giving money away irresponsibly. I nodded slowly. That's why you contacted Dr. Mitchell about a guardianship evaluation. Right. Another silence. They didn't know I knew about Mitchell. Mom recovered first. Sweetheart, that was just preliminary. We wanted options. Options for what taking control of my finances, my inheritance from grandfather. You're not equipped to handle that kind of money, Dad said flatly, mask dropping. You've proven that by throwing hundreds of thousands at every sob story. Your sob stories, you mean? Brandon laughed, ugly and short. God, you really don't get it, do you? This family has real assets, real wealth, and you work at a fucking nonprofit, giving money away to junkies and losers. Someone needs to protect the family legacy from your bleeding heart. The family legacy, I repeated. You mean the Northbridge Trust. Among other things, Cross said carefully. The trust that's worth $4 million. The one Mom and Dad have been collecting $300,000 annually from while telling me it was almost depleted. Cross went pale. My parents froze. How did you? Mom started. The same way I know about the second mortgage you took out on this house while telling me you needed help with property taxes. The same way I know about the credit cards you opened in my name. The same way I know Brandon's been receiving consulting fees from a shell company Dad controls. I stood up, calm as a frozen lake. I also know about Vanessa Stein, Mom, your cousin, Evan's partner's wife. This whole thing, it's a family conspiracy to steal from me. You can't prove, Brandon started. I can. Actually, every email, every document, every transaction. My forensic accountant is very thorough. So is my private investigator. Did you know you can subpoena text messages in Discovery? I pulled out the printed email Patricia had found, the one where Brandon wrote to Cross. Claire's too stupid to figure it out. We just need her declared incompetent before she accidentally realizes what she's actually worth. That's taken out of context, Brandon stammered. Is it? How about this one from Mom to Vanessa? Once we have guardianship, we can restructure everything. Claire won't even know what she's signing. The room erupted. Dad shouting about privacy violations, Mom crying about betrayal, Brandon threatening lawsuits, Cross trying to maintain control. I walked to the door, then turned back. Daniel Mercer will be in touch. Oh, and that neuropsych evaluation you were so worried about 98th percentile cognitive function. The only person in this room who might need a guardian is the one who thought this scheme would work. As I left, I heard Cross saying urgently, "Don't say anything else. Not a word." Too late. Every word was already recorded, transcribed, and backed up in triplicate. The trap had snapped shut perfectly. The Superior Court of Elm County was a monument to justice-delayed marble floors worn by decades of footsteps, wood paneling that had witnessed countless family destructions. 3 weeks after the dinner, we were here for the emergency hearing Daniel had requested. They'd tried to file their guardianship petition anyway, desperately pushing it through 2 days after our confrontation. Daniel had been ready. Your Honor, Daniel addressed Judge Margaret Hoffman, a woman known for having zero tolerance for financial predators. We're requesting immediate dismissal of the guardianship petition and a temporary restraining order against the petitioners. We have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Across the aisle, Evan Cross had been replaced by a bigger gun, Mitchell Graves from Graves & Associates, a firm that specialized in high-net-worth family disputes. My parents had liquidated assets to afford him. Brandon sat between them, his usual cockiness replaced by barely controlled panic. Mr. Graves. Judge Hoffman's tone was already skeptical. Your Honor, this is a simple case of a family concerned about a member showing signs of financial irresponsibility and emotional instability. Instability. Daniel stood. My client voluntarily underwent comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation with Dr. Sarah Winters. May I submit her report? The bailiff handed Judge Hoffman the document. She read, eyebrows rising. 98th percentile cognitive function, superior executive decision-making, no evidence of any psychological condition that would impair judgment. She looked at Graves. This is your unstable family member. Past behavior patterns. Graves began. Like giving her family $800,000 over 15 years. Daniel interrupted. We have documentation of every transfer. Interestingly, these transfers coincide with distributions from the Northbridge Trust that the trustees Ms. Bennett's parents claimed never existed. Daniel presented our evidence methodically. Bank records showing the double-dipping, emails discussing the conspiracy, the shell companies, the credit cards in my name. The recorded dinner conversation was the crescendo, my family's own words condemning them. She illegally recorded us. Brandon burst out. Single-party consent state, Mr. Fletcher. Judge Hoffman said coldly. And what I'm hearing is conspiracy to defraud a beneficiary of her rightful inheritance. Patricia had done additional digging that week. She'd found 3 other families Evan Cross had helped with similar schemes. 2 were under federal investigation. Your Honor, Daniel continued, we're also filing criminal complaints for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. The FBI's white-collar crime division has expressed interest. Mom gasped. Dad's face went gray. Brandon looked like he might vomit. Graves tried damage control. These are family disputes, Your Honor. Surely they don't rise to criminal Mr. Graves. Judge Hoffman interrupted. I'm looking at evidence of systematic fraud exceeding $1 million. I see identity theft. I see conspiracy to deprive a beneficiary of their legal inheritance. What I don't see is any evidence Ms. Bennett needs a guardian. She turned to me. Ms. Bennett, do you wish to press criminal charges? This was the moment I'd prepared for, the moment where mercy might smooth things over, preserve some remnant of family. Yes, Your Honor, and I'm requesting immediate removal of Helen and Robert Fletcher as trustees of the Northbridge Trust, with appointment of an independent fiduciary. You can't, Mom stood up. That trust is ours. Your grandfather wanted. Mrs. Fletcher, sit down. Judge Hoffman's voice could have frozen fire. I've reviewed the trust documents. Ms. Bennett is the sole beneficiary. You and your husband are merely trustees. Trustees who, based on this evidence, have grotesquely violated your fiduciary duty. The judge continued, I'm granting the following first. The guardianship petition is dismissed with prejudice. Any future attempts to question Ms. Bennett's competency will be viewed as harassment. Second, a temporary restraining order is granted. The petitioners may not contact Ms. Bennett except through counsel. Third, I'm ordering immediate forensic accounting of the Northbridge Trust and freezing all distributions until complete. Your Honor, Graves tried once more. The trustees have obligations, expenses, which they can explain to the forensic accountants. And Mr. Graves, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution and to the FBI for federal charges related to interstate fraud. Daniel wasn't done. Your Honor, we're also requesting personal judgments against the trustees for breach of fiduciary duty and conversion of trust assets. Motion granted for hearing next month. We walked out of the courtroom to the sound of my mother sobbing and my father shouting at Graves about incompetence. Brandon tried to follow me. Claire, please, we're family. No, I said, stopping at the courthouse steps. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't conspire. Family doesn't try to declare you incompetent to grab your inheritance. It wasn't supposed to, we didn't mean. You meant every word, every action, every betrayal. I looked at him, really looked at him. The golden child who'd never grown up, never taken responsibility, never seen me as anything but a resource to exploit. The FBI will want to talk to you about those shell companies. I'd get a separate lawyer from Mom and Dad if I were you. His face crumbled. Claire, I could go to prison. Yes, I agreed. You could. Daniel touched my elbow. We should go. Patricia has more information about the hidden accounts. As we walked to his car, I heard Brandon shouting behind us, ugly words about betrayal and family loyalty. Ironic, coming from him. The criminal investigation will take months, Daniel said as we drove away, but the trust accounting will be faster. Within weeks, we'll have control transferred to an independent trustee who will actually distribute according to your grandfather's wishes. What about the money they stole? Between the fraud charges and civil suits, we'll recover most of it. They'll probably have to sell the house. The house where I'd grown up, where Christmas mornings had once felt warm before I understood that love was transactional to them. I felt nothing. Good, I said. That afternoon, Patricia called with the final tally. Between the trust theft, the credit cards, and the documented loans they never intended to repay, $1.7 million? $1.7 million. That's what my family had stolen from me while claiming to love me. The restraining order meant peace. Finally. No more manipulative texts. No more guilt-trip phone calls. No more surprise ambushes. Just silence, broken only by official legal communications as the criminal case built momentum. Daniel filed our civil suits the next week. Recovery of stolen funds. Damages for emotional distress. Punitive damages for the conspiracy. My parents hired separate lawyers. They couldn't afford Graves anymore. Brandon got a public defender. The family empire they'd built on my exploitation was crumbling, and I was the one holding the sledgehammer. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the initial hearing. Local family accused of million-dollar trust fraud ran in the Elm County Tribune. Patricia had nothing to do with it. The court documents were public record, and reporters loved a good family betrayal story. But I made sure every relative, every country club member, every one of their social contacts knew exactly what kind of people the Fletchers really were. The forensic accounting was devastating. The independent trustee, Harold Whitman, had found layers of theft going back 20 years long before I'd started giving them money directly. Your grandfather would be horrified, Whitman told me during our meeting. The trust was meant to provide for your education and future. Your parents treated it like their personal piggy bank. The trust, properly managed, was worth more than $4 million. It should have been $6 million, but for their theft. I'm restructuring everything, Whitman explained. Your parents are permanently removed as trustees. They're also facing clawback provisions' legal requirements to return stolen funds. But I wasn't done. The civil trial was set for next month, and I had one more card to play. The Crescent Conservancy was a nonprofit supporting financial fraud victims, people whose own families had destroyed their credit, stolen their identities, emptied their futures. I'd discovered them during my research, reading story after story that echoed mine. I drew up the papers with Daniel. Upon resolution of all legal matters, $2 million would go to the Conservancy to establish the Benjamin Fletcher Memorial Fund, named for my grandfather, whose hard work was being honored properly for the first time. You want to give away half the trust, Daniel asked. I want to give away the half they stole. The rest is mine, as grandfather intended. But this way, their theft helps other victims. It's poetic justice. I sent the announcement to every media outlet in the state. The public response was immediate. My parents' church asked them to take a break from attending. The country club suspended their membership pending resolution of legal matters. Brandon was fired from his job when his employer learned about the federal fraud investigation. But the real revenge came at the settlement conference. Both sides met in a neutral conference room, beige walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of bitter coffee and broken dreams. My parents looked like ghosts of themselves. Mom had lost 30 pounds, her designer clothes replaced by department store basics. Dad's hands shook with what looked like essential tremor stress-induced. According to Patricia's research, Brandon wasn't there. He'd taken a plea deal with the federal prosecutors 2 years minimum security in exchange for testifying against our parents and Evan Cross. Ms. Bennett, their new lawyer, a harried-looking public defender named Tom Washington, began. Your parents are prepared to make a full confession in exchange for leniency. No, the word hung in the air like a blade. Claire, Mom whispered, breaking protocol. Please, we're sorry. We never meant... You never meant to get caught. I corrected. You meant every theft, every lie, every manipulation. You meant to steal my entire inheritance while gaslighting me into thinking I was unstable. The stress of this is killing your father, Mom tried. His heart was fine when he was spending my money on golf trips to Scotland. Daniel laid out our terms. Full confession. Guilty pleas to all charges. Agreement to pay full restitution $1.7 million plus interest and penalties. Surrender of all assets obtained through fraud, including the house. Permanent no-contact order. In exchange, we won't pursue the maximum sentence. That's everything we have, Dad said flatly. Yes, I agreed. It is. Where will we live? Mom's voice cracked. That's not my problem anymore. The final twist came from Harold Whitman. He'd discovered something in the trust documents, a morality clause my grandfather had inserted. Any trustee convicted of crimes involving dishonesty would forfeit all rights to trust distributions, even those they'd already received. We can invoke clawback for 20 years of distributions, Whitman explained. Roughly $3 million. They didn't have $3 million. They'd spent it all on luxury, on Brandon, on maintaining their facade of wealth. They'd have to declare bankruptcy. You're destroying us, Dad said, his voice hollow. No, I replied. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just refusing to be your collateral damage anymore. The settlement was signed. The criminal pleas were entered. The sentences were handed down 18 months for Mom, 2 years for Dad, both in minimum security. But the real punishment was the complete dissolution of their carefully constructed life. The house sold at auction. Their cars were repossessed. Their retirement accounts were liquidated for restitution. They'd leave prison with nothing but Social Security and whatever minimum wage jobs they could find as convicted felons. The day before they reported to prison, Mom sent one last letter through her lawyer. I read it once, then had Daniel add it to the legal file. Claire, I hope someday you can forgive us. We lost ourselves somewhere along the way. Your grandfather would be ashamed of what we became. She was right about one thing: grandfather would be ashamed, but not of me. The Crescent Conservancy held a ceremony when I signed the donation papers, $2 million to help victims of family fraud rebuild their lives. Why so much? The director asked. Because revenge isn't just about destroying those who hurt you, I said. It's about building something better from the ashes. Standing in their offices, surrounded by pictures of families torn apart by greed, by testimonials from survivors of financial abuse, I thought about that night in the rain. They'd locked me out, choosing money over their daughter. Now they'd lost both the money and the daughter. The local news ran one final story. Heiress donates millions to fraud victims after family betrayal. They used a photo of me signing the donation, smiling. In the background, barely visible, was a framed photo I'd insisted on including my grandfather, the man whose legacy was finally being honored. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Saw the news, proud of you. Brandon would serve 2 years. Mom would serve 18 months. Dad would serve 2 years if his health held up. The Fletcher family empire was done, and I was free. Free from guilt, from manipulation, from the toxic obligation of blood ties. The trust, properly managed now, would generate enough income for me to live comfortably while continuing my work at the nonprofit. They'd wanted me to be independent. In the end, they were the ones who'd lost everything. The call came on a Thursday evening, 3 days after the donation ceremony. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code, the federal detention center where they were being held pending transport to their permanent facilities. Against my better judgment, I answered. You have a collect call from Helen Fletcher at the Metropolitan Detention Center. Will you accept the charges? One last conversation. Why not? Yes. Claire. Mom's voice was small, defeated. What do you want? Helen. The use of her first name made her inhale sharply. I wanted you to know that Brandon's been crying. He's terrified. He's never been away from home, never had to face consequences. And whose fault is that? Silence. Then mine, ours. We ruined him. Didn't we ruin everything? Yes. The lawyer says we'll probably serve the full sentence. Your father's blood pressure is dangerously high. The doctor at the detention center says stress could kill him. I said nothing. Don't you care at all? We're your parents, Claire. We gave you life. You gave me DNA, I corrected. Everything else, love, support, loyalty, those were just transactions to you, investments you thought would pay dividends forever. That's not. She stopped. Even now, even broken, she couldn't fully admit the truth. What happens when we get out? We'll have nothing. No home, no money, no family. You'll have each other. That's more than you ever gave me. You're really going to let us rot. I'm going to let you experience consequences. There's a difference. She was crying now, ugly sobs that once would have moved me. I'm scared. Claire, I'm 63 years old and I'm going to federal prison. Your father is 65. We might die in there. Then you should have thought about that before you committed federal crimes. You're cruel, she whispered. We created a monster. No, I said calmly. You created a survivor, and survivors don't owe their abusers anything. I hung up. Daniel called an hour later. The trust distribution is complete. After the donation and legal fees, you have $1.8 million in assets, generating roughly $90,000 annually in investment income. Enough to live on. Enough to continue my work without worry. Enough to never need anyone's financial help again. There's one more thing, Daniel added. Evan Cross was disbarred today. The FBI found evidence of 6 other families he'd helped destroy. He's looking at 15 years. Another predator stopped. Another small justice in a world full of injustices. That night, it rained again. The same kind of cold October rain that had started this journey. I stood on my apartment balcony, letting the drops hit my face, remembering that night when they'd locked me out. The old Claire would have sat in her car, crying, wondering what she'd done wrong, that Claire would have apologized, would have tried harder, would have given more, that Claire died in the rain that night. The new Claire, the real Claire, was born from that betrayal, and she was magnificent in her ruthlessness. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Bennett, my name is Amy Chen. I read about your story in the Tribune. My family is doing something similar to me. Could we talk another survivor needing help? The cycle of abuse continuing somewhere else, in someone else's family. I texted back, call the Crescent Conservancy tomorrow. Tell them I sent you. They have resources and lawyers who can help. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows. Somewhere across town, my parents were in separate holding cells, waiting for transport to federal prison. Brandon was already at his facility, probably lying awake, realizing that his golden child status meant nothing behind bars. Did I feel guilty? No. Did I feel sad? Maybe, but not for them. I felt sad for the little girl who'd once believed her parents loved her unconditionally, for the young woman who'd emptied her savings account over and over, thinking she was helping, for all the years wasted on people who saw her as nothing more than a resource to exploit, but mostly, I felt free. The doorbell rang. Lena stood outside with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. Thought you could use company, she said. We sat on my couch, eating lo mein and drinking Merlot, not talking about family or betrayal or justice. Instead, we talked about work, about the new housing project I was managing, about her girlfriend's attempt to learn pottery, about normal things that normal people with normal families talked about. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Lena asked eventually. Forgiveness requires repentance, I said. Real repentance, not just regret at being caught. They're not capable of that. So this is it. They're just gone from your life. They removed themselves from my life the moment they chose to see me as a mark instead of a daughter. We watched the rain trail down the windows, each drop racing others to the bottom. I thought about the trust money, properly managed now, growing steadily. about the families the Conservancy would help with my donation, about Brandon learning what real consequences felt like for the first time in his privileged life. "You know what the ironic part is," I said. "They spent so much time and energy trying to steal from me. They could have just asked. If they'd been honest, if they'd treated me like family instead of a fool, I would have helped them. But they couldn't see that. No, greed made them blind, and now they've lost everything." The next morning brought sunshine and a final document from Daniel. The permanent no-contact order had been approved. Any attempt to contact me, directly or through third parties, would result in additional criminal charges. It was over. Finally. Completely. Irrevocably over. I stood in my apartment, looking at the life I'd built despite them. Simple. Honest. Mine. No luxury cars or country club memberships. Just peace and the knowledge that everything I had was earned, not stolen. The woman who'd stood in the rain that night, locked out and betrayed, had won. Not through violence or cruelty, but through truth and justice and the kind of calculated revenge that comes from refusing to be a victim anymore. They'd taught me that family was transactional, so I'd completed the transaction. They'd taken everything they could, and in return, I'd taken everything back. The ledger was balanced, the debt was paid, and I was finally, truly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives make this community richer. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building a life so good that their absence is a blessing, not a loss.